Another day, another beautiful morning. Charles, as always, thank you for kicking off this morning's conversation from our Enugu studio. Welcome to Abuja. My name is Nwabosen Joko, and this is Signature Morning. You see, the way I've looked down is because I feel uncomfortable about the issue we're going to discuss this morning. And because I do not know why we should be engaging in the drawbacks in our democracy instead of advancing the conversation on the good things and the growth and strengthening of democracy. But when issues arise, we don't shy away from conversing on them. And this morning, we're raising a very strong question. Emergency rule in Rivers State. Is the sole administrator going beyond his brief? Is he acting against the Constitution, whether that's an emergency or no? Do certain things prescribed by the Constitution fall apart, fall aside, just because a state of emergency has been declared? The state of emergency in Rivers State, is it a democratic order and therefore ought to be operated within certain rules provided by the Constitution? You can see why I'm uncomfortable. I would have loved to discuss the growth of party politics, improve good governance, more voter confidence, citizen happiness. Those would have made better fare. But whatever comes, we face it squarely. And my guest this morning is a gentleman who has expressed worry about the stalling of democracy in Nigeria. I would call it stalling of democracy, about the stunted practice of democracy in Nigeria. And he wished, as well as I do, that things worked better. Ammeh, oh Ammeh. He's a lawyer with particular interests in patriotic citizenship, with particular interest with responsible political leadership and good governance in our country. Ammeh, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, senior citizen. Thanks for having me. Thank you. Yeah. Good to be here.
Ammeh, the president declared a state of emergency in Rivers State. There have been very strong arguments that that declaration is anti the Constitution. The president seemed to have overreached himself. That conversation has gone on and on and on. What's your take on it?
Thank you very much. Let's start by saying that a state of emergency by the dictionary.com is described as a situation of crisis, urgency, when some extreme measures need to be taken. Usually it is declared or proclaimed by a government official or government officials. It could be a state governor or the president, and in our case in Nigeria, president and commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And usually, that declaration will bring about the curtailing of freedoms, liberties, the rights of the citizens affected by that the declaration. So that's just a picture of what a state of emergency is like. On the question that you raised, whether the president overstepped his bounds, no. Well, I think that the National Assembly has saved the day. It's arguable anyway. Because the Constitution, by Section 305, which empowers the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to declare a state of emergency, in Section 1 of it, it talks about the President, first of all, putting it in the official government gazette, and thereafter he transmits that official government gazette to the National Assembly. And in that instrument, that gazette specified reasons why it has to be declared, the situation in maybe a state or states or local governments, as the case may be, of the federation. And then the National Assembly, when I say National Assembly now, of course, to the head of, because ours is a bicameral legislature. So it goes to the Senate President in our case, and it goes to the Speaker of the House of Reps. And then they now call the meeting, the session of both houses, the Senate and the House of Reps. And of course, by 2/3 majority, that intended proclamation is approved. Let me use a simple word, approved or ratified, or given their seal of approval. Then the president can now proceed to proclaim a state of emergency. But in this case, the case at hand, the reverse was the case. A lot of commentators, a lot of speakers have said, well, initially it was a breach of the steps prescribed by our grown norm, which is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of 1999 has amended a number of alterations. But the president proclaimed he put the horse before the cart instead of the cart. He put the cart before the horse instead of the horse
before the cart,
dragging the cart behind. So he put the cart before the, which is not right. But I think the National Assembly has saved the day. But whether the 2/3 was actually God is another issue for
in fact, that's a very interesting dimension to it, because consistently a number of my guests have said that what the president did in Rivers State was an illegality. But a gentleman came here and said, look, even if it was about to be an illegality, the moment the National Assembly approved of it, the president could be held liable if he failed to act, because that would be contrary to the Constitution. So nothing illegal about it any longer. Well, let me ask, in a state of emergency, who should be oversighting the area concerned? The legislature, National Assembly, or the executive?
Well, a state of emergency, let me quickly say that a state of emergency is not something that one would wish, or as a religious country, let me pray for. Because the truth of the matter is, the powers that be, the officials of government, the sovereign powers who proclaim this state, most times abuse those powers. They take advantage of that, go beyond their bounds, do things that are not in the interest. Ordinarily, when things are done properly, a state of emergency should be declared in good faith and with an objective assessment, based on an objective assessment of the situation on the ground. You don't just do it for some selfish reasons, because you want to take it out against a political opponent or somebody you don't like or something. So it has to be in the interest of the people ultimately, and with genuine intentions of the powers that are so declaring. Now, in the instrument, the proclamation document, the Gazette itself, it usually specifies, and that's where the president has a lot of discretion and power. He specifies what should be the modus operandi, who should do what, and whatever. I have not personally seen that Gazette.
Let me draw attention to the last sentences of that proclamation. The sole administrator should not make any new laws. In his official actions, he needs to get certain approvals from the Federal Executive Council. Now, some members of the National Assembly are saying, no, it is the National Assembly that should be overseeing the actions of the sole administrator. That was why I asked you the question. In a situation like this, what does the law envisage? That the sole administrator should be oversighted by the legislature at the center, or since the legislature in the state has, of course, been dissolved?
By Section 11, subsection 3 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the National Assembly takes over in a situation like this, makes laws, and provides legislations that will regulate
guide
the
operations
in the state for that period. Now, the president has declared it for the first 6 months. So, for the first 6 months, it is the National Assembly by the provisions of Section 11, subsection 3 of our own Constitution. And every president of Nigeria, the last time I checked, they always take oaths of office as commander-in-chief, as president of the Federal Republic, and then you take the Constitution up. If you're a Muslim, you hold the Quran. If you're a Christian, you hold the Bible. A traditional worshipper, you hold whatever.
You hold your phone.
And then you swear and say you uphold the Constitution. And I want to remind our president and every other leader, uphold the Constitution. People should, that oath you took, but you begin, because that section says the National Assembly begins to make laws for that state concerned or that area that is under the emergency rule. That's how it should be. And the sole administrator there is supposed to defer the National Assembly. When it comes to issues of legislations, it is the National Assembly that has the powers by the Constitution. The instrument that is there, whatever is there, cannot override.
That's the point I'm trying to make,
Ammeh,
because that instrument says that the sole administrator should report clear with the Federal Executive Council.
But
is the Federal Executive Council a replacement for the Rivers State Legislature?
It can't be. It can't be. The Constitution is clear. And any law that clashes with that by Section 1, Section 1, Sub 3, is it that any law in Nigeria, any of its provisions that clashes with the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal
including this instrument,
whatever it is, rule or whatever you call it, shall be to the extent of its inconsistency be null and void. So I want to encourage the stakeholders, Rivers, Nigerians of civil society, they should test it in the court of law.
Well,
they should test it in the court of law. Challenge it.
Let me tell you one thing that the sole administrator has done. He has appointed administrators for the local governments. Maybe somebody said because there is a state of emergency. I want to look at this state of emergency, the appointment of local government administrators, against the pronouncement of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in June of last year that no unelected form of government should administer the local governments. In the state of emergency, has that Supreme Court pronouncement become a nullity?
Well, the last time I checked, I stand to be corrected, I know there were elections under the administration of Fubara.
Yes.
Similarly, Fubara. There were elections. What happened to those local government chairmen?
No, what happened? The moment the Supreme Court, he went home and dissolved them.
They're fine.
As ordered by the Supreme Court.
By the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court ordered fresh elections.
Yes, fresh elections. Now that's where we are. Now, that fresh election has not been conducted. Now, I'm also aware that there is a dissolution of the SIEC, the State Independent.
I'm coming to that.
Oh, right, fine. So now, the question again I ask is, in a state of emergency, what will be the best interest of the people? Does it include you appointing sole administrators? Does it include you? Now, the sole administrator, for how long are they going to be there and all of that? Is it not possible? Perhaps, may not be in a hurry to go to the other point. Perhaps there is something that they see and know that we don't know. But what I'll say about that is whatever the sole administration is going to do, in the first place, should there even be a sole administrator? In 2013, and may God bless him, gentleman President Goodluck Jonathan declared state of emergency in 3 states in the Northeast: Borno, Yobe, Adamawa. He didn't tamper with the will of the people. Let's not forget that these governors, House of Assembly members, were elected by the people. The people say, these are the people we've chosen to govern us, to lead us in our state or local government or respective locations. There's no way I've seen in the Constitution, in all my years of practice, that you declare a state of emergency and then you temper with the Constitution provides for how a governor is to be removed by impeachment, or if he dies, or if he resigns. It's clear in the Constitution and it's there for all of us to read.
It never provided for a state of emergency and you said
we've seen it. President Goodluck Jonathan did it. What is paramount? What are some of the features of a state of emergency? Is one, increased police presence, increased military presence to forestall any breakdown, total breakdown. In fact, by the definitions in section 305 of the Constitution, it talks about when there is a disaster, natural disaster, whatever, there is imminent danger or there's actual breakdown of law and order, when a governor requests by the approval of the judge of the House, they say, okay, let there be a state of emergency in this state for so and so reasons, security breaches and all. But it can be said that the situation was that bad in Rivers that you had to bring it, even if it was that bad. We've seen it done by President Goodluck Jonathan, and the heavens did not fall. He moved the military there, moved the police there, and the situations were addressed. Did they have to remove the governor elected by the people in Rivers State to address? I thought they would have told intelligence would have reviewed that, oh, these are the people behind the bombing. How are you even sure that it's not a state-managed thing? A cry, oh, pipelines have been bombed. Oh, how are you even sure it's not even the enemies of democracy that did that to achieve whatever their interests are or were? So I don't even think that there should have been an appointment of a sole administrator in the first place. And because of that wrong move or appointment, other things are being done wrong. Because the foundation is wrong, and like we say in law, you can't put something on nothing and expect it to stand. You see, Mark 4. So once the foundation is bad, everything has to collapse. So you will hardly get something right from
the wrong premise.
And the foundation is faulty.
I mean, let me just, as we are speaking now, I say, let me draw attention to something. And that is, let us assume that the president declared a state of emergency because of the bombing of oil pipeline, and that was going to affect the national economy. It's quite a dire situation.
Well, of course, yes, I agree.
But why is it, since the state of emergency has been declared, we have not heard that the president, using the instrumentality of the military or the police or DSS or other covert operations, has now apprehended those who bombed that pipeline? Have the criminals dissolved into the salt waters of Rivers State?
Let me also, let's take ourselves down memory lane. Let's take ourselves down memory lane. We had another fantastic president. May God rest his soul. And I don't know why such people don't last long. President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. Fantastic young man. Great guy, if you ask me. He was president. We had dire situations in the southern part, what we call the Niger Delta region today. There was no declaration of a state of emergency. The vice president under him then, who succeeded him later, President Goodluck Jonathan, was sent there to negotiate with his own people. God gave him the wisdom, and they did a clinical work there and resolved the issue in the Niger Delta. The heavens didn't fall. There was no declaration, or was there one? There was no declaration of a state of emergency. And that's the kind of leadership we are praying for as a nation. Leaders with wisdom, leaders who consult with the people. Okay, you can imagine now if President Bola Ammeh Tinubu, the father of the nation today, had called the stakeholders in Rivers. What's happening? My your children, come. What's the matter? I'm not against you. Hey, Equatorial people, this, come. Let's talk. What's the issue? We want your best interest. Okay, your governor remains. But there's a feud between the master and the son, or whatever. Can we put selfish interest or individual interest aside and face governance and address? You can imagine if he had done something like that. I'm sure Nigerians would have given him an applause.
Now, I was saying that the Supreme Court made a pronouncement around June of last year. That was when the case of financial autonomy that was instituted by the Minister of Justice to determine whether the local government should not, as a territorial government, not be financially autonomous. And the Supreme Court, of course, ruled on their financial autonomy. Then the Supreme Court added that by the provisions of the Constitution, the money can only be given to democratically elected councils. Does a state of emergency nullify this Supreme Court pronouncement?
Well, the state of emergency does not. However, in the situation, we have an extreme situation,
Yes.
as it were, in Rivers State. There were no elected chairmen of local governments before the declaration of the state of emergency. So in the circumstance, I want to believe that it's a part of the gazette that there be sole administrators to administer governance
that tier of government.
that tier of government pending. And that will force me to the next issue.
Yeah, because I'm going to ask you, just wait, before I force issue. In a state of emergency, can the sole administrator conduct election into the local councils?
But again, like I said, in this state, in a situation like this, most times the powers that be abuse the powers. They abuse it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about the abuse. What? Because, look,
that's what I'm
the
saying.
law must provide for something.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
They take advantage of, the state of emergency is an abnormal situation where the usual laws are suspended, the usual freedoms and rights are curtailed. The government that administers the state at that time tells you your limits. How far you can
walk outside of the law.
They walk outside of the law. That's what I'm saying, that they take advantage of that situation, suspend the law. It's just like a military regime. Let's just tell us, it's just like a military regime. They take advantage of that regime or that period and do all sorts of things. So unfortunately, that's what is panning out in Rivers State. We now have sole administrators in the local government. I want to believe they are to hold forth until such a time when it will be conducive to conduct local government elections. If you can't take away that, you take it away that there are aberrations here and there, but that's what you get in the state of India.
Yeah, I mean, you know why I'm pushing you towards you are educating us on the system, on the situation there. The sole administrator has dissolved the State Independent Electoral Commission. He's going ahead to appoint officials into that position.
I also want to believe that whatsoever the sole administrator is doing is getting the nod of the presidency and the powers that be. That man is not just acting by himself and on his own. He's certainly getting instructions from somewhere, getting some guiding directives from somewhere. And these are the things that we are querying and we're challenging. Was it necessary for Governor Sim Fubara to have been removed? Was it necessary for the House of Assembly of Rivers State to have been suspended for 6 months? These are the issues. So now, you are now dissolving the State Independent Electoral Commission. Was that necessary? Are you saying the people that were there before you came in are no longer capable? Didn't they conduct elections some months ago that brought about the will of the people? So why dissolve the SIAC? What's wrong with them? Why? So these are the things we are saying, that under an emergency rule like this, all sorts of things can happen. There are certain interests. I don't want to go into certain areas. We all know that somebody is definitely, some group of persons or individuals are benefiting from the status quo in Rivers. And some, and if you ask me, certainly the governor is the loser and his team, they are the losers.
Yeah,
sad to say.
You appoint officials of the State Independent Electoral Commission. I want to believe that the Constitution which you have in your hand specifies the processes for making these appointments.
Sure.
And the sole administrator goes outside of the provisions of the Constitution to make those appointments. Can they stand before the law?
Well, we wait until that is challenged. But like I said earlier, under the emergency rule, there's an official gazette which has been ratified, has the seal of approval of the National Assembly. It's as good as saying that it has
the authority of law,
authority of the people of Nigeria. We also say it as lawyers that law was not made, the man was not made for the law, but the law for man. So it is not like the law of the Medes and the Persians. And think out with it, where it has to, it's not favoring the people, where it's not going in the interest of the people. And think out with it. And a state of emergency is an opportunity for the powers that be to tamper with a number of these things. I want to believe and I want to be sure that in that gazette, all of these steps the administrator is taking, I stand to be corrected or, disproved on this. I want to believe that all these are within his mandate as well administrator to do within the 6 months of the.
Okay, let's. This is just an assumption. I'm not raising it as fact. If the gazette and the mandate of the sole administrator includes dissolving the State Independent Electoral Commission, sacking everybody there, and appointing new ones, you say that they can misuse the state of emergency.
Sure.
And if these appointments, this gazette, contradicts the provisions of the Constitution, what options can be available to the people of Rivers State?
I want to refer to the administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo. I'm aware, I'm not very sure now. I know that some persons challenge
in Plateau State. I was there in Plateau State.
Yeah.
They went to court.
Some persons, yes.
They went to court and the person that couldn't dissolve the State House of Assembly.
The erudite and eminent Professor Ishesagi was a very prominent voice at that time. Was a very prominent voice. And they went and challenged, and the court said some of those steps and actions were wrong and unconstitutional. But most times when these decisions come, for me, the pain for me is that these guys have done their thing and gone. They've done what they wanted to do.
Yeah, because if there's a precedent in law,
and we don't.
If there's a precedent in law,
the black man can be very lawless.
No, I'm very black.
I'm black too, and I'm ashamed to say, but I have to say it. This same President Bola Ahmed Tinubu condemned the state of emergency, which the gentleman Goodluck Jonathan declared in those 3 states in the Northeast. He used the words, it was an overreach of federal power. This is a man who didn't even sack sitting governors and houses of assembly. He merely paid the proclamation and moved in the military and increased the security presence in these states to save Nigeria from invasion. The Boko Haram, the ISWAP, and all of those who were hoisting their flags and declaring, collecting taxes from Nigeria. In fact, I don't think any of those cases of Plateau, Ekiti, and those 3 states were.
What?
I mean, Rivers is nothing near, not even up to a tenth of just you blew pipelines and so. Don't we have bandits that have been terrorizing people in Zamfara? Has any president declared the state of emergency in Zamfara? In Katsina?
In Plateau State, in Brekenladi,
I don't understand.
Because 61 Nigerians were slaughtered.
There's been no state of emergency. We've had situations in the Southwest. Remember the West 1962?
Yes.
The Southwest region then, there was a state of emergency declared. Nigerians challenged it to some of the steps taken by the powers that were then. I wasn't born, but I read it. Now, so this sitting president now queried the powers exercised by the then President Goodluck Jonathan, the same president. So if you ask me, we don't learn. It's unfortunate, but I have to say the way it is. Black people, we don't learn. We don't appreciate presidents. We condemn people. When we're in the shoes, we do worse. Now, tell me what has happened in Rivers that you declare state of emergency and they remove the governor, remove. Certainly, there must be some other interest that we're not, you and I are not aware of. And I dare to say that. It's sad, it's painful, but that's what we have. Presidents after presidents, leaders after leaders, you condemn. When you grab power, you do worse. Check virtually all the things they accuse the former ruling PDP of. They've done worse. They have done worse. And their words are coming back to them. They are coming back. They are staring them in the eyes.
Okay, let us interrogate another institution, that is the National Assembly. I've done a program, an edition of this program, on where I'm asking lawyers, because this is legal mathematics. It's legal mathematics. How to obtain 2/3 of a population by audio. Can you give me, do you calculate the decibels and you get the 2/3 of decibels to get 2/3 of audio?
I see this like a trap, but it's fine. But how? By voice vote, it is possible for two people to shout louder than 10 persons who don't have the voice, the chords in their throats to shout. It's possible. Two people will shout and you say, "Oh, the eyes have it."
Okay, that is legal mathematics.
It is just practical.
That's legal mathematics. But look at where I was heading to. When the president begins to do things extra the Constitution, when the president's actions undermine the constitutional order, who should put the president in check?
The National Assembly is there.
In the current situation,
we have the Senate, we have the House of Reps.
In the current situation, why is National Assembly not seeing what we're seeing? Are they not seeing these constitutional infractions? I'm not saying anything harsh. Even a member of House of Reps has already said that before the sole administrator takes an action, he ought to clear with National Assembly. The document sending him there says clear with the Federal Executive Council. He's dissolving constitution.
Even the budget of the state is supposed to be submitted
to the National
Assembly by the provisions of Section 11.3 of our Constitution.
Okay, when these things are going on, what ought our National Assembly be doing?
It's what we all know. Now, in a democratic setting, you have three arms of government. You have the legislature by Section 4. By Section 4 of our Constitution, 1999, creates the legislative arm of government. Section 5 refers to the executive, and Section 6, the judiciary. These three arms are supposed to check themselves. It's called checks and balances. So that nobody has absolute power, because like we say, absolute power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So there's checks and balances. And this runs across the three tiers of government: the federal government, the state government, and the local government. All of these tiers are expected to have their three arms of government. Where the president or the executive is misbehaving, the National Assembly is supposed to call it to order. Or each of those senators there and House of Representatives are representing the several nations, ethnic nationalities of Nigeria. Let me call it that way. All the ethnicities, the nations that make up the Nigerian state are represented
in that National Assembly.
But the question again is that in our own case, I like to domesticate my discussions. In the Nigerians, I'm a realist, in the Nigerian situation, can we say that even up to 35% of those people are there for the interests of Nigerians? Are they really making laws? Are they really there for the first interest of Nigerians, or for some other selfish interest? Okay, today's National Assembly, today's Senate, can you say he can challenge any aberration, any illegality of the sitting president today of the executive? You know the answer. I know the answer. You know the answer. We all know the answer. Nigerians are watching. Whether we have a robust democracy, we have a National Assembly that is engaging the president, that is actually challenging certain things that are not in line with the constitution or the will of the people. We all can see it. And if you ask me, we have had more rubber stamp legislature or legislators than legislators that are actually independent in the sense of being independent and doing what they were elected to do.
I mean, I always give the benefit of the doubt when I engage in conversations like this. Do you think really that simply selfish or partisan political interests are what are driving some of these tendencies of National Assembly to keep quiet? Or is it a matter of legislative ignorance? Because they have the Constitution. They legislate by it every other day. Their activities in those chambers are guided much more seriously by this Constitution. Is it that our members of National Assembly have chosen partisan politics? By partisanship, I mean just anything the president of their party wants, he gets, irrespective of whether it fouls the Constitution or not? Or is it because they are illiterate of the Constitution which they operate, or they are roundedly ignorant?
There are so many factors and a number of truths that we must tell ourselves. Let nobody deceive anybody. For most of the decisions we see today in our country and what our legislators, executive and people do, most of the time it is selfish interest, party interest first, before the interests of Nigerians. Let nobody deceive anybody. Like I said, I'll keep saying it. I'm a realist. I say it. We must tell truth to power. We must tell truth to power. And all of us are Nigerians. And I'm saying this boldly on this national television. All of us are Nigerians. We have a right to speak. You may not like how we say it or what we say, but I have a right to speak up for myself. I have a right to speak for the Nigerians who look up to me. I have a right to speak for Nigerians. We all have rights. Even that little person in that village somewhere, in some creeks, in somewhere in Nigeria, we are all Nigerian. Nobody is more Nigerian than the other. And we have a right to speak. You need my vote. I need your vote for you to win elections. Even if my candidate does not win an election, it doesn't mean you should now treat me like a slave and think that whatever you're going to do should be Unfortunately, there are leaders in our country today who have won election. They tell some people, yes, you didn't vote for me, so don't expect anything from me. When you become, like in the US today, advanced climes, after politics, they drop politics. When they win elections, they drop politics.
They into governance.
And begin to do governance.
Even Trump had this. I don't know. I give the US as an example because Trump says that Americans rig elections. I'm quoting Trump. Americans rig elections, and very corrupt people find themselves in the DOJ. I'm quoting the American president. I didn't make up the words myself. Well,
he knows why he's saying all of that. I don't know what
I don't know. I'm quoting that's what he said.
But the truth is, Trump will come. Trump has come, and he will go. America is it will remain. It's a nation. It's got institutions that are more powerful than it's not like Nigeria where the reverse is the case. Individuals are
when Trump is pulling that, shredding institutions.
Well, it's just 4 years. It's not long time. He has less than 3.5 years.
Let's go back to our legislature, because you know why I want us to go back to our legislature. All the conversations we have raised.
Sorry, sir. Before you go to that question, there was a point I wanted to make.
Kindly.
It would be sad for me to say today, and Nigerians know this fact. Most or many, let me say most, many of our legislators are just warming their seats. They can't engage in any robust debate in the floor of the House or in the Senate. It's unfortunate, but I have to say this, and I fear no man on this. Many of them are not qualified because even the things that Nigerians, the yardstick, the factors they use in voting or not or rigging elections are not the factors that can bring about enviable leadership. They are not the factors that can bring about fantastic leadership. Many of them are there, they don't even know the laws. I can tell you today, they don't even know. They are there to collect their entitlements, and during some festive periods, they go home, raise their hands and make some noise, share bags of rice, and go back there and continue. I'm coming, we'll just continue there. It's sad to say. Only a few of them know why they really there as lawmakers. Otherwise, how can we have two arms in the, or let me not say two arms, we have two houses. You have a House of Rep, you have a Senate, and then you can't even hear any serious objection. The Senate president sits there as if it's there. Anything the president brings, it must go through because you belong to the same party. That is not how it should be. And we dare to say to them, they should know that power is transient. Whatever you do today, you sow today, you will reap tomorrow. So, cross-carpeting, you are in this party today, you jump to party C tomorrow, party this, it doesn't change the nature of these persons. And that is the reason why our democracy is not an exemplary one. Nigeria should have gone past where we are today by far. But we're not learning the lessons. Unfortunately, our leaders are not learning the lessons. We're not picking up the issues. We're not willing to make progress. I see more of retrogression in the last 8 years of the last President Buhari up till now. I have seen more retrogression than progress in Nigeria. And I'm saying this not because of any party interest. I'm a lawyer and I'm saying it the way it is, telling truth to power.
Okay. Now, Ammeh, the school administrator is doing his thing. He's appointing new officials. He's trying to do another budget until some people started raising the alarm. He's dissolved the State Independent Electoral Commission, appointed local government school administrators, and there have been the question if he's appointing a new set of the ISEC, the Independent State Electoral Commission, is he going to conduct election? Does he have that authority under the law to conduct the election? Last week, stories appeared in the social media. Videos and photographs also did appear, showing that the 27 lawmakers in Rivers State, loyal to the FCT Minister Yusuf Wike, are in UK, are in London, undergoing a legislative course on effective legislation under a presidential system of government. The state legislature has its budget, which the speaker ought to be administering. The same way the executive executes the state budget. And provision should have been made for this kind of legislative course in the UK. But having been dissolved or suspended by the president, the speaker can no longer be administering those funds. How do you think the speaker and the 26 others managed to raise funds to go and execute a legislative course that ought to be paid for from the budget of the state legislature?
Well, I wouldn't know the arrangements they have. Sincerely, I wouldn't know. So I want to be very careful about making comments that I'm not sure of.
Yeah, but such courses should then not be run from the state legislative budget.
Well, they did go in that official capacity as...
yeah, but the report said 27 lawmakers.
Well, yes.
The legislators.
Suspended lawmakers by virtue of the declared proclamation of the state of emergency. They are not sitting now. I wouldn't know if they use their personal funds or an individual or somebody is behind their trip to the UK for that legislative cause. Whatever it is, I believe that in the coming days or months, the truth will come out. Maybe when
they are
the
back
legitimate
in the
governor returns, the legitimate leader of the state returns, same for we'll get to know. Records don't lie. No matter how you try to hide the secrets, one day the truth will come out. So let's wait to know who is behind the sponsorship. But of course, they couldn't have embarked on that kind of journey under normal circumstances. And in the situation of a proclamation of emergency, that shouldn't even come up in the first place.
Let me ask you, I'm not trying to make you the speaker, but a course by legislators on effective legislative performance under a presidential system. If things are normal, who ought to fund it?
Well, usually every state has a budget. And when you talk about legislative, the legislature has its own budget. The governor presents a proposal. Let me use a simple word so that I don't people say budget. It's just a financial proposal of income, anticipated income, and then expenses to be incurred. Simple. That's what the budget is. It's not a big grammar thing. This is the way we're expecting revenue from IGR, federal allocation, 13% derivation funds, name it. These are the expected projects. These are the projects we want to execute. That's what the budget is. And in that budget, you will see the allocation for the judiciary. Maybe we want to build XYZ courts in Ahoda West, Ahoda East, or maybe in Okobo, local government, like that. Yeah, you name them. And the legislature is also having its own budget. When that budget comes, the legislature, while considering it, they are representatives of the people. They can say, no, Mr. Governor, we think you should include this capital project. We think you should include or remove this or prioritize this. The legislature is expected to have that robust interaction and conversation with the executive before that budget is passed into law. And that is the instrument that should accommodate
that kind
causes of this nature. Now, in an emergency rule, can it be said that the sole administrator just took money and gave them to go, or somebody somewhere give them the money? It shouldn't be River State government in a time like this. That's why I said, let's be sure. What source? Who is financing it? Or was it in the budget earlier that they were not benefiting from because 4 people were sitting, legally recognized? How did the money get there? I believe that in the coming months and years,
we know who released this money.
Whatever.
Maybe.
But in a state of emergency, that cannot happen. That cannot happen because they are suspended. So anything legislative activity is suspended. Just the way the elected governor, his team, are on suspension for 6 months. The same applies to the legislature.
Well, maybe as Ammeh has said, as the weeks go by, we'll find out whether the sole administrator dipped his hands into the budget of the legislature. He's now running everything and decided to send these 27 gentlemen to UK on a training on effective legislation under a presidential system of government. Is it for the legislatures? Where are the other 4 legislators?
Well,
because this court is supposed to arm legislators for better performance when things return to normal. So some will be ignorant, others will be armed with better knowledge.
Well, if the other 4 persons, Jumbo and his team, are not a part of it, then there should be something more to it than we know. So we wait. The coming days and months will reveal all of this. And then we will know whether we'll have to go to court or we have to now begin to argue and engage in some debate about the legality or otherwise of some of these decisions. I believe the coming days will reveal a lot of things and then we'll take it up from there.
Is there any provision in the Constitution, Ammeh, that can make the president remove the governor?
I have not come across any. Like I earlier submitted, there are 3 ways by which the governor can be removed. Either he dies, Is not, and in the case of, I can't really remember now, but there was a case for bodily issues, health and all that. Okay, yes, the doctrine of necessity.
No.
President Yaradua. He said he is absent from office. He cannot, by virtue of his health, it's like the National Assembly that usually to mean death or absence ad infinitum. So that was how it was invoked. One of the champions of it is the current Bauchi State Governor, and that's how Goodluck Jonathan became a president in the interest of Nigerians. So either he dies, or he's impeached, or he resigns.
Okay.
So these are the ways.
If the 6 months are over,
the president is also an elected person. He was elected, just the same way the governor was elected in the state. He's an elected person. He has no power to. He has no power to remove. Nobody can except by these three modes. There's no other way you can remove a sitting governor. To do so is to plot a coup. Is to engage in a coup. Is to run a coup against the state.
okay. In this state of emergency, I was going to ask a question, but I've cautioned myself. And that is, if after 6 months, certain things have not been achieved, can the president extend it than that 3 months, 6 months? Yes.
Well, if he has reasons, cogent and compelling reasons that people can see, who can feel, that are palpable, of course, he can extend if it is obvious that extending it will be in the interest of Nigerians. Of course,
And
he can,
state.
and that must again be ratified by the National Assembly, the third majority of the National
Is there any number of instances that the president can extend the state of emergency?
Well, if it is obvious, that the emergency has to remain until when it is obvious and clear that
indeed there's a situation
security
that warrants.
that, of course, it has. If it even happens, it affects. It also affects the Federation of Nigeria. If there's external aggression, maybe some natural disaster or something, very serious, urgent, and extreme, it will remain until those situations are beat and where you can have normalcy. Like we said, the state of emergency is an abnormal situation. So you don't expect to have those normal rules that we live by, rights and modes of operation to remain until that normal situation returns. Then we can now talk about democracy in the strict sense of the word democracy and its operations. Yeah.
Should Fubara, the suspended governor of Rivers State, be receiving his salaries now?
That he is suspended is not because he did something, he breached the constitution, or he did something against the laws of the land.
He's not removed.
He's still the governor of Rivers State. Of course, he should be collecting his entitlements. He's still the governor of Rivers State, including the legislators that got judgment recently of the Supreme Court that they are still validly elected in the absence of any evidence before the Supreme Court show that they decamped for another party. And they should be collecting their...
Okay, what I'm listening to this way, I was trying to say, maybe since their salaries were not paid for some time, and now that the Supreme Court has cleared them of not defecting after they had announced that they had defected, maybe they put together their arrears of them paid.
Don't forget that,
and then went to UK.
Don't forget that humongous amount has been released when the administrator was appointed. That humongous amount was released to the administrator. So there's so much money there. So much money.
They can collect their money and decide to go to UK.
Not? They can sponsor themselves if they are that patriotic. But in Nigeria, those legislators that will sponsor themselves, well, I'm waiting to see.
Well, my producer is been standing right, telling me, please try and wind up. We've been looking at state of emergency in Rivers State. Has the sole administrator been overreaching his brief? Has he been going beyond the intent and provisions of the Constitution? My guest, Ammeh, Ammeh, a lawyer, he says a state of emergency is an unusual situation. And sometimes it creates room for unusual actions. I tried to pin him down to whether these unusual actions should be allowed under the state of emergency. He has kept telling me people can exploit those unusual situations to do ought, some ought not. River State is an unusual situation, which unusual situation I'm sure Ammeh really doubts, because he says, he gives an example. Zamfara is in a worse situation when it comes to security. The governor of Borno State has openly said last week that Boko Haram has seized some territory. The governor of Plateau State has said that bandits have colonized some locations in Plateau State. Last week, 61 Nigerians were killed. Are these situations for a state of emergency? Ammeh says his own worry is that declaring a state of emergency cannot equate to dismantling the institutions of democracy. It is creating the condition for security operatives not to be bogged down by all those procedural constraints to tackle any situation that is urgent and very serious. River State, let us see what happens 6 months hence. There were reports early last week that the president could shorten that state of emergency. By the way, Ammeh, I was about to conclude. Let me ask you, can the president really shorten that 6 months?
Why not? If he sees that normalcy has returned and the situation is no longer there as it supposedly was before that proclamation, why not? He can shorten. Puts it again in the Gazette and goes back to the National Assembly. Oh, my people, we have considered, like I said earlier, it has to be based on an objective assessment of the situation. It has to be done in good. We say leaders should be honest with their people. When you assess this, you say, no, I think it's the right time for us to call it off. We believe, and I see as Mr. President, and from the intelligence I'm getting, Rivers people are ready for peace. They've embraced themselves. They are ready for normalcy to return. There are no more agitations and anxieties here and there. Oh, my people, there's no need to continue for the 6 months in the earlier proclamation. I think we can now end it maybe by the next 7 days or so, or a month or something. And then the National Assembly looks at it, ratifies it, puts a seal of approval on it, and then the president proclaims. And that does it. So there's nothing hard and fast about it.
Well, nothing hard and fast about it. He also admitted that maybe there are certain things the president saw and is seeing that we here in the studio are not seeing. But all we're seeing that Rivers people are going about their normal businesses. And that one explosion, we will not be able to locate the culprits and bring them to book. Maybe the president could be afraid of another explosion. Who knows, depending on intelligence he's getting. But for now, that's the much you can speak with facts and not faction or presumption. And my guest has been Ammeh, looking at state of emergency in Rivers State, whether the state administrator is going beyond the provisions of the law, the Constitution, and his brief. Ammeh, thank you very much for coming to the program.
I appreciate you, sir.
Great.
And I thank the station for having me again.
And the conversation, as I always say, never ends. Tomorrow is another day. For today, please have a great day and good morning.